everybody. My name is Alan. On behalf of the crew, I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Bridging Heaven and Earth. You know, I mean, I talk about this and I talk about on the ride over here, I was thinking of something. And, you know, again tonight, you know, I was riding over, I knew we were going to have this show if everything went according to plan. And, you know, the intention was, what was I going to say at the opening? And then all of a sudden, it really came to me is that, and we've talked about this so many times before in one way or another, is what really do people want? I mean, really what in a human life do people want? And what they really want is to feel love and to share it. And in every race, religion, nationality, country, everywhere, every place on this planet, every human being, whether they're conscious of it or not, wants to feel love and to share it. And yet we go through this life and we kind of, in a way, flail around trying to experience that connection to that love, that connection to that unconditional love. And to become one with that, not dependent on a certain financial condition, not dependent on a relationship of some kind, that working out or not working out, that our job is working out, that we have health, but something that we know inherently as human beings, that there's something deeper, there's something at the core of our very being that throughout history we've called God, we've called truth, we've called Brahman, we've called all the names, but we want that experience. And we do so many things in this life to try to have that experience. And it's not the thing itself that's either good or bad or indifferent. It's, are we getting the juice of that experience? Is that experience giving us that connection, that love, that unconditional love that is not dependent on anything? And in that experience, we realize we're all brothers and sisters here, that we're all the same love, that we're all that same energy. And that's what a human being wants. And then we go into all the side places and all the places that seem like they'll give it to us, and they don't. And our job on Bridging Heaven Earth is to bring people to you who've explored these areas, who've come to an understanding, who've come to some level of that unconditional love, who've walked this human path through its shadows, through its darknesses, through its obsessions, through its abundances, and come out to some extent on the other side to say, we need that love, and we can have more of that love, and here's my experience, and here's my gifts to you. And again, we have somebody with us whose life is dedicated to that. Connie Zweig is a spiritual teacher. She's a therapist. She's the author of critically acclaimed books, Meeting the Shadow and Romancing the Stone. Her new book, The Holy Longing, The Hidden Power of Spiritual Yearning, just delves and goes into those questions and those answers of how we can feel love and share it, all of us. And we're just delighted that, you know, Connie could come and share her experiences, her life gifts with us. And we also, as we normally do, have two beautiful music videos that we put together here. They're Alessia music videos, Oh Happy Day and Enough God. So again, it's another opportunity to see another human brother and sister being able to share that love and to come into that. So just settle in, whatever you've done today, whatever busyness you've had, wherever you're watching this, whenever you're watching, just settle in, sit in your chair, relax. Let's do a short meditation, then we'll have a video, and then Connie will be with us. So join me in a short meditation. If you don't know how to meditate, just relax, settle in, close your eyes, and then we're going to have an extraordinary show. So please join me. Usually they snap their fingers if they think that all the crew does that, so I figured I'd beat them tonight. So we're going to start tonight's show with a Leslie music video. It's Oh Happy Day. Leslie and I wrote it together. It's performed by Leslie, and it's on the Leslie of Bridging Heaven and Earth CD. So Oh Happy Day.
Oh, happy day, no more painful walls divide us. Oh, happy day, it's a new millennium. Oh, happy day, with spirit that'll guide us. Oh, happy day. We've been lost in our illusions. We were brainwashed from the start. We've been captured by contradictions that confuse a genuine heart. We've been pieces of a puzzle with a picture so unclear. We could never make much sense of how to love or what to feel. I believe we can do it. I think we stand a chance. It just takes a bit of knowing it's like learning how to dance. Since we are the world, we can change the world. Oh, happy day. See that kid out on the sidewalk. When we thought we all were separate, well, it was easy to place the blame. We could label away the innocent, judge so many by the name. But when we all come together, things will be as they should be. It's time we all begin again to truly see what there is to see. So easy when we try.
Hi, thank you. So we're on the set with Connie. Welcome, Connie.
Thanks.
Thanks so much for coming. So what is that holy longing that we have? We talked about this earlier, that it wasn't your title, although we loved the title, but it came from where did the title come from?
The title came from Goethe's poem, The Holy Longing, where he talks about the soul flying insane for the light and dissolving in the light. And I think one of the meanings of it is the one that you mentioned in your introduction about our longing for love. And yet I think that the soul's desire, you were posing the question, what do we really want? And I might ask it, what does the soul desire? At the soul level, I think we long for the love of God or the love of the divine.
Do you think they're separate? I mean, when I was talking about at the open, I was talking about like that unconditional love, the God love. Because the other love is...
It's conditional, isn't it?
Seems like it. It's hard not to be.
Yeah. Well, I think in our culture, romance has taken on such mythic proportions that we tend to look at love as personal love. But that there is a deeper kind of love, as you're saying. There is a relationship with something larger than ourselves that we yearn for.
I mean, it's almost like coming home. I mean, it's not almost like separate from ourselves. It's recognizing, in essence, what we really are. That's the hunger, because it's like, how do I go home?
Yes.
Recognize that I'm home.
And we have those moments when we feel at home with ourselves and at home with life and at home with the universe, but they're fleeting. And then we go back into the longing. And people experience that longing in different ways. I think some would say it's a longing for love, unconditional love. Other people might put it differently. They may just recognize that there's a lack, and it's kind of a nagging lack. And they may say to themselves, there's got to be more than this. There's got to be more than material life. It's not enough. And other people, as I said, would frame it as romantic love. If only I find the perfect partner, I'll have that sense of completion. I'll feel at home. And other people may put it in a theological framework. I'm longing for the divine. I'm longing for Allah. I'm longing to be embraced in the arms of Jesus or to be enlightened. I'm longing for the light of enlightenment, of realization, of awakening. Other people might put it in psychological language. I'm yearning to be complete, to know myself, to have a kind of self-knowledge that will quiet my soul, that will make me finally at ease, content, fulfilled. Peaceful, yeah. So there are different ways of framing it for people.
But I mean, in essence, would you say in your experience, in your research, that in a way it's not really far different? It's like almost different languages, but we're talking about finding that peace, that true peace that's not dependent on all the external factors.
There are different languages and different frameworks for it, but I don't know that they're all the same. And here's why I say that. Because I think that if we say that they're identical, we kind of collapse the levels of consciousness. And I do believe that human beings evolve, and we develop through stages of consciousness. And if we read the lives of the mystics, we can see that in any tradition. Hindu, Sufi, Jewish, Christian mystics, when we read the stories of their lives, we can see that they long for God, they reach a certain plateau, and they feel some sense of peace. And then that yearning arises again, and it carries them to another stage, to another level of consciousness, where they describe a certain contentment, and that restlessness arises again. And so it's our holy longing that actually keeps us evolving, keeps the soul unfolding. And so I don't want to kind of say it's all the same.
Can someone reach a place where that longing is in a human form, in a sense, complete?
Big question.
Well, we're 5 minutes into the show. We might as well get it.
Big question. I would say that it takes a leap of faith for me
to believe that there is someone on this planet who has attained that level of consciousness. I would like to hope that. I would like to believe that.
Do you think it's possible for you in your physical body?
I think it's possible for me to attain certain levels, and I've been practicing meditation for 35 years now. I think it's possible to attain certain levels of contentment. I don't hold out the hope of the kind of enlightenment that I've read about in the saints and the seers.
Would that, in a sense, be eliminating the creator or God or some fate or destiny from the process? I mean, why would you think that it's not possible in the next breath? Just being on the show is enlightening many people, so why would you feel it's not possible for you?
I do think it's possible in the next breath. And
Right.
then there's the next one.
Right. Exactly.
And then the next one.
Until
Yeah.
here today,
And the
gone
next
tomorrow.
one.
Right.
Right.
Until there isn't.
Right. So what I have come to believe for myself is that at a certain level of truth, the soul is already realized. At another level, we could say a psychological level, we're miles away. In Sufism, they say we're only 3 bow's lengths away from the face of God at any given moment. In Zen, it's just a breath. But that breath may take a lifetime, or another lifetime,
right.
or another lifetime.
So would you say that when, like, say, assuming Jesus said what people say he said, that the Father and I are one, in that experience that there was some realization in his being of that everything had
of unity.
of unity. You know, so the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost are all contained within everything, and he recognized that. And so there was one human being, more or less, let's say, who had experienced that compression of the oneness, that experienced the oneness.
And my sense is that there have been many women and men who've attained that moment. And I don't know how many have stabilized it as a level of consciousness, have been able to live it without then falling into the shadow.
Okay, why don't you talk about that? Because you know, I know you've written 2 books that...
And what I really, after writing Meeting the Shadow and Romancing the Shadow...
And dating the... No, that's the next...
Marrying the shadow, no.
Having a really good time.
I wanted to return to the light. I wanted
So you'd spent enough time
I
with
had
shadow.
spent enough time kind of exploring the darkness psychologically.
Why do you think that someone who had experienced that has a tendency to go towards the shadow? I mean, that's an interesting... I mean, you obviously have done a lot of research internally and externally with that area, so...
You know, that's a
You're
good
our
question.
shadow expert.
That's a good question. Yeah. After many years, and I tell my own story in the new book about this, because I feel that many people have experienced the same thing. After years of longing for the light and of sitting hours on end in meditation practice, what I found in myself and also in my clients is that ultimately we're human. And part of being human means that we are unconscious, and that unconscious part of us erupts. And sometimes it erupts in destructive ways. And we've now seen that in most of our spiritual teachers, in every alternative spiritual community that I know of.
We're at 100%.
The teachers
running
have acted
at 100% loser. Oh,
They've
God.
acted, but see, I don't see it as a loser.
No. So
I
you see it
as
just part of the
human.
process.
I see it as their humanity. And that whether they've acted out...
Are we defining something as a shadow and you know, and they wouldn't? I mean, could their, you know, life experience, once you attain that level of experience, and even, let's say you're continuing in it, that your behavior could be something that would be ununderstandable to someone who's not having that experience?
I really wrestle with this in the book because I tell many stories of these spiritual teachers. And as I was writing it, the clergy abuse scandal was happening in the Catholic Church. So I really wrestle with this. From a certain level of consciousness, let's say from God's point of view, maybe it isn't the shadow acting out. Maybe something's happening that's perfect. But from the point of view of a parishioner, a child especially, but even an adult disciple of a teacher who is sexually molested, who is financially coerced, who is threatened with banishment if she doubts or questions.
Go to hell.
From that person's point, right, threatened with fear of hell or damnation. From that person's point of view, it looks like there's a shadow issue happening.
Yeah, why don't you just define what, just in like a couple of sentences, the shadow is?
The disowned part of a person, the part that's outside of conscious awareness, that erupts in what appears to be a harmful way.
I see.
So, and it may be a critical comment in passing. It may be a harsh look. It may be very subtle.
I mean, I've been around a lot of spiritual teachers too, and they perhaps would say, do as I say, don't do as I do. Now, whether that's...
What does that message mean, though? It means that they're not living what they say, because what they're doing doesn't match it.
Well, but you're talking about like different levels. So if I'm at a different, if I know different forms of math or anything, or swimming or something, and I would tell you to do it a certain way, but I wouldn't do it that way, because I'm coming at it from a different experience. So my love for you, from your point in time and space, on your level, would be to say, do it this way. And for you to wake up, in other words, like the argument in essence would be, that your life is on fire and you don't know it. And if I just whisper it to you, you won't hear it. So I have to I have to do something more dramatic, more traumatic.
Yes.
And out of love for you, as you would if you saw a child falling into a hole, you'd grab them by the arm, even if it took wrenching their arm.
So there are many traditions that teach this kind of trickster orientation toward getting people to wake up. The Zen tradition and the Vajrayana tradition, Dafrijan and Rajneesh. From a psychological point of view, this looks like rationalization. It looks like a statement of, I'm going to treat you harmfully so that you'll wake up. But when that person is harmed in that way by the very teacher with whom they put their faith, in whom they trust to be kind and compassionate, that's an abuse. That's a religious or spiritual abuse. And
I'm not defending all the, the pedophilia in the world. That would be a very difficult, who would want to go there? But I mean, there can be times where, as we were just saying, the example of a child walking towards a hole. And if somebody saw you doing that, and grabbing them and not knowing the hole was there, and you wrenched their arm out, then they would call the police and you'd be arrested. Unless you could show them the hole, it would be a very difficult proposition. But they might have the vision to see the hole, and not other people don't.
So how do you know the beholder?
How do you know the vibration? I'm not saying that most of the people involved in these things, I would agree with you, are coming from their own disharmony,
narcissistic needs.
Disharmony and all that. But I wouldn't be so certain that it can't be done in a way. It's almost like the example of two people helping a blind person across the street. One person wants to get him across the street so they could rob him, get him out of the way. Another person actually just doing it lovingly.
What is the intent?
Yeah, what is the vibration?
What is the intent?
Or even more than, well, in addition to the intent, is what is the vibration of the person doing it? What level of love do they have?
So one of my real struggles with this book was to hold the complexity of this issue. Not to make people wrong, and not to be self-righteous, that I know what's right. And it's very complex. So, for example, in talking to people who were with Rajneesh or Osho, people were coerced to have sex with people they didn't want to be intimate with. But when they come out of the community, they say it was an incredibly liberating experience.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's what.
So how do you look at that experience?
Right.
Do you look at it as coercion and abuse and therefore traumatic? Or do you look at it from a spiritual point of view and say they got freed of attachments, they got freed of beliefs, and therefore it's a good thing? And what I tried to do, the book is not like the cult literature, which says this is all bad, you have to get back into mainstream society, you have to be normalized. This is not that.
Yeah, that's worked really well over the years, so that who would want to go back there? That's
at the same
really
time,
wonderful.
But the other side is everything spiritual is positive. It's the other side is it's all good and we don't have to look at it psychologically, and that's not my point of view either. So what I'm trying to do, talking about building bridges, what I'm trying to do is build bridges between psychology and what we now understand about boundary violations and trauma and autonomy and dependency and all these issues, and spirituality and what we understand at this point about waking up.
Don't we run into, like difficulties or problems in a way when we separate it all out in science and religion and spirituality and psychology? I mean, because every time we divide up that way, we're kind of limiting the whole, like the holistic nature.
Yes.
So how do we deal with the holistic of it, the whole of it?
How do we hold the whole and also discriminate?
Discern is the
discern.
Yeah, right.
Because
that's
without
tricky
discernment,
right.
We surrender our minds.
Right. Well, I mean, we've talked, we've done this show many times with, enormous numbers of really extraordinary people, and there's been a lot of talk as we've been talking about, the place of a guru, the place of a teacher, the place of a priest, the place of that figure of authority, and how that could work. Assuming the person's in a state of some level of cleanliness internally, and not doing it for ego or attachment or power or all those issues, which might narrow us down to 3 or 4 other planets, so we can eliminate that. But assuming they are, that a good guru will like take you out of the world and show you the infinite almost through themselves and then walk you through it. So at some point your attachment to that person is of value, because it can...
There is a stage in which discipleship serves us.
It can serve.
It can serve us. Psychologically, what's happening there is we're projecting, we're unconsciously attributing to another human being our own radiance, our own compassion, our own wisdom, some of which might belong in our own treasury. But for that time being, at that stage of development, we're giving it to that person. If that man or woman can honor it by carrying our ideal for us and holding that position for us, just like a good therapist, it can be very healing. At a certain point, it's my position that at a certain point, that teacher needs to hand that back.
That would be the
and
theory.
Empower.
Right. The person ultimately has to be empowered. Absolutely.
And without psychological training in our teachers and priests, that's not going to happen.
Well, my way of looking at it, if the person is really experiencing that level of consciousness, then the training would be almost internal. I mean,
it would be instinctual.
Yeah, instinctual, internal. I mean, and with each moment they'd be dealing with it, that consciousness would manifest like love in motion, in essence. So
but tragically, what we've seen, what we've witnessed, is that many teachers get caught up in their own power shadow, in their own narcissistic needs, in their own hunger to be loved, to be adored, to be mirrored. And when that happens, they then encourage the dependency in their students, not the growing independence in them.
It's tricky business.
And so it's very tricky. And I think that's what happens with the clergy. I think the same thing is happening. And this is why it's so hard right now for the clergy, the Catholic Church, to look at itself, to undergo this dark night of the soul, and really relinquish certain positions and certain policies and certain projections so that it can change.
Yeah, maybe what we'll do is watch the other video, and then we'll take on the Catholic Church for the next half an hour. That's probably that's a series that we could do.
Lifeline series.
Yeah, right. It's a series of books and TV shows. All right, so we're going to have the second video now. It's Enough God. It was written and performed by Leslie. It's on the Leslie of Bridging Heaven and Earth CD. Enough God.
Teach him how to hate. Don't ask why, just do it. Teach him how to kill. So well, there's nothing to it. Teach him how to load and fire for the Holy Land. Take a little more and make him an angry man. But isn't there enough God to go around? Aren't there enough soldiers underground? Isn't there a bit of peace to be found? Isn't there enough God to go around? And on the other side sits a mother crying. Son is back, but not for long, 'cause he lies dying. Another faceless boy shot down for their holy land. Though she prays for him, she can't really understand. She says, isn't there enough God to go around? Aren't there enough soldiers underground? Isn't there a bit of peace to be found? Isn't there enough God to go around? People that close their eyes, they don't see what they're doing. 'Cause they'll trade anything for the dreams that they're pursuing. They burn, they bomb, they bargain for their holy lands. But nobody wins that way. Nobody ever can. Tell me, isn't there enough God to go around? Aren't there enough soldiers underground? Isn't there a bit of peace to be found? Isn't there enough God to go around? Isn't there enough God to go around? Aren't there enough soldiers underground? Isn't there a bit of peace to be found? Isn't there enough God to go around? Isn't there enough God? Isn't there enough God? Isn't there enough God to go around? To go around? To go around? To go around?
Hi, so we're back on the set with Connie. Why do you think it is that we haven't, as humans, been on this planet a while and seemingly evolved in some way? that we haven't developed institutions that really serve that need, that aren't so full of shadow and disharmony and pedophilia or whatever. You know. Why is that? I mean, what is the human thing of that?
Our institutions are created by humans, and humans have a dark side. We're not, we are beings of light, but we're not only. We also have ignorance, the remains of ignorance. You know, we have impulses toward destructiveness. But what I do feel is that our longing for the divine is larger than the institutions that were created to contain it. And that's one of the things I think that's evident to us now, that we see the institutions toppling everywhere and we see our religious leaders falling from grace. Our holy longing doesn't go away. It searches for someplace else to go, for something else to contain it. And that to me is a hopeful sign. And one of the reasons that I wrote the book, to try to talk about how can we live with this yearning for the divine when the institutions don't hold it. They actually can't contain the light.
So people talk about a new paradigm. Do we need new paradigms and new institutions to rise up, to hold that longing, yearning, fulfilling, longing, yearning, fulfilling?
My suggestion is that we learn how to work with our shadow sides, whether it's in our political leaders, whether it's in our marriages, whether it's in our parent-child relationships, or our religious lives. It's there. And spiritual shadow, I believe, is there to stay. I don't think it's going to go away. Do we need new institutions? Yeah, we need to create institutions that will match the level of our development, the level of the evolution of our consciousness, that will reflect our consciousness.
Can institutions be an ongoing changing?
But I do think they need to keep changing, and one of the problems is they get entrenched. They get concretized, and they don't change with us.
Well, humans have a tendency to become habitual and...
Yeah.
So, I mean, really the question is how are you born again? Not in the Christian sense, but in the revolutionary sense of being alive. How are you be here now and here now and here now and here now without developing all the attachments and all the identity?
Well, I think
you got about 20 minutes to solve the world's problems.
Well, what I can say about that is that making our spiritual practices a priority, whatever they are, if our holy longing leads us back, because I believe that what we deeply long for, my language for it is transcendence. What we long for is transcendence. Your language for it is love. But transcendence...
I have other words.
But transcendence is opening to that unity with the divine. And whatever it is that brings us there, if we follow our longing, which is our communication from our soul, it's the soul calling to us, telling us there is something greater. If we continue to tune to that, to follow it, then we will have moments of transcendence. It could be in an experience with nature and the beauty of the natural world. It could be with prayer, or visualization, or meditation, or lovemaking, or any practice, or going to church and listening to a sermon. Any practice that connects us with that is what needs to be primary in our lives. And so it's my belief that that will guide us, and it will enable us to leave institutions that don't support that. And as we do that, those institutions will falter. As we leave teachers who don't encourage us to have our own inner experiences, those teachers will lose their communities, because we're learning to turn within and be our own teachers. And the more that happens, the more we'll become the leaders, and we'll create institutions that reflect our consciousness.
The difficulty is, I mean, to have an institution that is busy being born also.
It's very difficult.
Right. I mean, and that's so. In other words, in essence, it would be an institution that wouldn't be an institution because it would be changing at every minute, like the same way a person would be.
Well, I'll give you an example of one, and I tell the story in the book. Yogi Amrit Desai, who was the leader of the Kripalu Yoga Center in Massachusetts, it was revealed that although he claimed to be monogamous in his marriage, he was having sexual affairs with his female students. And when the scandal broke, the whole community fell apart. People felt so betrayed and outraged that their teacher was lying and cheating that everything blew up. And the institution no longer operated. They had a residential community. It couldn't function anymore, with him as a traditional Hindu Swami leading the community. Instead of retrenching and trying to hold on to the old form, like the church is doing, he stepped down and he said, "You're right, I'm ashamed at what I've done. I need to become a student and learn what happened." The community became much more democratic. They brought in therapists and counselors and other spiritual teachers. They began to do shadow work on themselves. The teacher began to do shadow work on what was going on with him, why he sabotaged himself. The community has been recreated in a different form, not a traditional guru-disciple form anymore, but a more democratic, open process kind of community. Now, chances are, at a certain point, it's going to freeze again. It's going to become concrete again, and something else will arise and shake it up. But for me, it's been a model of how to do this differently.
Do you need a lying, cheating, thieving teacher?
You need some eruption of the dark side in order to show that something's wrong, in order to show that self-reflection is required and transformation is required. Because if that doesn't happen, and without the dark night of the soul, the saint would not keep longing for more.
If someone was in some level of study of their own being, would they not recognize what you're calling the shadow, or that part of themselves? I mean, why do you think it's so difficult that people, miss it, keep missing it, and miss it in others?
It's like a blind
I don't
spot.
really miss it.
It's like looking at a blind spot.
So you don't want to see it you don't want to admit it in yourself, and so you don't want to admit it in others.
It's the very
Especially the
thing.
person you give the God qualities to.
Yes, the very thing we don't want to see in ourselves and others.
And why do you think that is? Because it's, I don't see it really as a problem. I mean, it's just, it's fine.
It's our humanity. It's part of who we are. Why is it? I think we're built that way. We're made that way. I think we're made.
That's interesting, because that's what we, what in essence, part of the, the show is to put out a vibration of love, but it's called Bridging Heaven and Earth. And so why do we think a lot of the earthly types of things are even shadow sides? We define things in a certain way, we almost make them darker, and then we make them something that we can't look at or hide. And there's nothing wrong with most of them. Yeah, it's lying about it and hiding it that, if you want to do it.
That's exactly right. That's how it builds more charge.
Right, exactly.
If we can
it's not the thing itself.
It's not the thing itself. We begin to shine the light of consciousness on it. We can laugh at it sometimes.
Exactly.
It's not as big a deal as we think. But it carries shame and feelings of helplessness and guilt, and so it feels heavy. It feels charged.
Those are very, very emotional.
Right. And so sometimes,
and you want to hide it.
When you want to hide it. So sometimes we need help in bringing that out. Even our spiritual shadow, we need help for talking about the kinds of things that we want to hide.
Like what would be spiritual shadows? The examples of those?
I've been working with a woman who carries guilt from having an abortion 30 years ago. And it's all about...
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, it's all about her religious teaching.
Those things go so deep. It's brutal.
It's profound.
Yeah, it's very brutal.
Yeah. So what I mean by spiritual or religious shadow is that it's those teachings that are leading us to feel.
They're fear-based, and
yes,
they end
they're
up in fear.
fear-based. That's right, and they're
they're not
shame-based.
love-based.
They're shame-based.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we have the Bridging Heaven Earth Foundation, and we talk about it being inclusive and infinite.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, and that's really the way we feel about it. And if it's not, then, you know, if it's separating and cutting people out,
yes,
then what can it serve, really?
So we're focusing for the moment on the earth-based part of it. But there's also the longing for heaven. And we're witnessing right now a certain kind of holy longing around the world that I think is quite frightening. Because it's quite frightening. Because here's what I mean. We're certain people, fundamentalist people,
very, very powerful,
in Christianity and Islam and in Judaism, are interpreting their longing as a longing for heaven, for paradise.
Yeah, 312 Vestal Virgins who would want to go.
That's right.
It's easy
That's
there.
right. And if we look at this desire to sacrifice themselves, to sacrifice their lives.
Yeah, no value of a human life.
No value.
Them or any others.
The value of the human life for fundamentalist Muslims is to die, to go to Allah. Right. To go to Allah. The value of the life is to be martyred. But you know, it's not that different from fundamentalist Christians who believe that they will be taken up in the rapture, embraced in the arms of Jesus, or fundamentalist Orthodox Jews who believe that they are only here until the Messiah comes and then only they will be taken up to heaven. So there is this distortion of the holy longing, which most of us experience as a positive.
Well, not only that, it's just no experience of the holiness. I mean,
yes,
in the
holiness here.
The holiness is an experience of oneness. There isn't all that separation. There's enough God to go around in the oneness. Trust me, there's definitely.
But my understanding, what I've come to in listening to a lot of people about this, is that they're mistaking death for transcendence. They're mistaking the concrete dying of the body for the symbolic experience of transcending to the next level of consciousness. You remember when Halley's Comet came around and there was this cult?
Yeah, Hale Bop.
Yes, Haley Bop.
Right.
And there was a group
No, they all wore a certain kind of sneaker, so you knew it had to be right.
There was a group, these members of a cult who committed group suicide in order to catch the comet. And what they said was that they were going on to the next world because this world wasn't worth living. And now we're seeing this on a huge scale in members of traditional religions. And my sense is that if we had a means for transcendence in this life, if we had practices and rituals that enabled us to experience that unconditional love or that unity with the divine in this life, we wouldn't make it concrete and think that it's in the next life.
You know, but it's just, up until this moment, the difficulty has been that it hasn't been that easy. You know, it's not so obvious. And people, like in your books, they try all these various methods. Mm-hmm. And that actual experience of that transcendental experience, that love experience, that oneness experience, isn't really available. And but in my opinion, I think it's really changing. And I think that there's a certain energetic and new paradigm coming in where that is more and more available to people. To actually have the experience of the infinite, of God, and to rub it up against that more and more. And then that expression, the goddess and I are one, you know, the Father and I are one, is more and more real. And in that experience, all the separation starts to, you know, lose its vitality.
Yes, yeah.
So I think there's tremendous hope at this particular time.
I hope you're right.
We get a lot of calls from a lot of places, a lot of people, you know, from a lot of different countries and religions, and you know, who want to, you know, all those obviously idiotic separations. If you rise above, you know, like 2 feet off the earth, it looks really, you know, all the lines of countries, and and people don't want those to run their lives anymore.
It feels to me like there's a polarization happening, that there are more and more fundamentalists, and there are more and more people who recognize the unity at the deepest levels of humanity, you know? And it seems that this is our work. Our work needs to be not just to intellectualize about it, but to experience it by whatever means we can, to find the ways to experience it through practice, through coming back to practice.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to have that experience.
And that's what we long for. That's what the soul longs for. It comes from God, and to God it returns. And it's about finding the way to taste that here now.
Actually, I have this thing up on my wall. It was a calendar piece or something that Buddha said at the moment of his enlightenment, he realized he was always enlightened. And that's the tricky part.
That's the tricky part, yeah. Uncovering it. But there are many layers of coverings. And sometimes we'll get a glimpse, and then we'll forget again.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why there are, you know, most traditions or most teachers have certain practices so that you come home, you get the horses back in the corral a couple of times a day. So that by the time you go to get them, they're not like 400 miles down the road.
That's right.
And then you can't find them, you don't know where they are.
It's quicker to come back.
You know, I call it like being around the center, and you're not swinging so far on either side of the pendulum, so you're more, you know, just kind of rotating around the center. And whether you actually stay at the center, I don't know if it's really important, but you're kind of, you know, if you're in disharmony, it's much more obvious to you sooner.
Yes.
You know, so you're actually more in every breath. So if you take a breath and you're in disharmony or emotion or a manifestation, you'll just stop, because there's no goal. You're not going anywhere. You have an intention, but, you know, it's the journey.
Yeah, with a practice, you have a means to come back to that center of that swing. And that's what I teach people. That's
well,
important.
and you know, but practices have a tendency to develop the same characteristics as a guru. That you're a Buddhist and not a human. That you're, you know, that this is your practice. You'd walk over the, you know, the body of somebody to get to that practice. So you're not really alive.
So then we become attached to our unattachment.
Well, we become attached to being a Buddhist, or the process of being a Buddhism, or Buddhist techniques, or meditation techniques. So
or a Hindu, or a Sufi,
any of them, right? Any of them. So it's like, how can we, you know, get to the point where, you know, we're like love in motion. We're not Buddhists. We're not anything. You know, we just because you know, at every moment we're
we move beyond those identifications.
Right. There's no identity. But there is that process. So why don't you, I mean, you do, you know, therapy and stuff like that, and you have a website. Why don't you, what's the website? www.conniezweig.com. There you go. Easy enough, right? And, you know, if any information, they can call me, which is Alan 805-687-2053. So www.conniezweig.com. Yeah. So, and so people can call you from anywhere, all over the world, and you do phone sessions and all that, right?
I do spiritual counseling and shadow work by the phone.
And you're a nonprofit. You have a nonprofit institute.
I have a nonprofit institute, And I'm very interested in working with people who are really living these spiritual issues and have these kinds of questions. And I'm also licensed as a minister, a spiritual counselor.
So we can get married.
I do marry people, that's true.
Well, we're coming to the end of the show, so maybe we can marry heaven and earth tonight.
Let's marry heaven and earth, Alan.
Okay, so, you know, again, let's just do it, you know, and we're here. We could do it, and we can do it. Not only can we do it, we can do it joyously, and we can come together and just share the love, and, you know, we can and we want to. Good night. God bless you. Thanks for coming. Good night.
Thank you.